Now,
it probably will be, you know.
It's a low bar.
It'll be much worse.
So our talking point of the week with no games to discuss is that we sort of chatted here and there over a beer about how NRL boards can't run NRL clubs, and so we set ourselves a task to go and find a squad based off not necessarily players that are nobodies, but we came to the conclusion what we'll do is try and find a squad of 25 from players who are all going to be off contract at the end of next year. So free agents, I know contracts don't count for much in this day and age, but essentially free agents in 2023. So we've set out to pick 25 players. The assumption will be that, we'll find a few 18-year-olds to fill up the remaining spots and see how we go with our own administrative challenges. And so that's what we've started to do. Who wants to lead away? How should we do this? I'll read out actually some of the social media stuff we got just throughout the week.
Sure.
Oli asked who should be the marquee signing and which franchises should be looked at. Rugby League, in my opinion, would go with the Dolphins because they play at Redcliff. Rod's, the fourth team should be called the Nuffies, captained by DCE. Thanks, Rod. Crushers was better than all of them. Anyway, Dolphins have the money. That's all the NRL care about. Wade.
Well, they all have the money.
Minchinberry Jets deserve a franchise. Big Jim as mascot. Just give me a sec. I've got a crying dog at the door. One sec.
Well, some interesting comments there. What do you reckon, Barn? I'd personally go with Redcliff, and it's not just because they're from Redcliff, but my explanation was all three teams have the money, but they are the team who would still be the closest linked to their former club. So they'd still be called the Dolphins. They'd wear the Dolphins kit, but they'd mainly play out of Brisbane, whereas the East Tigers would be the Brisbane Firehawks, and you've got the Ipswich Jets who'd become the Brisbane Jets and sort of change their colours and stuff like that. So
Sure.
Who would you go with, Barn?
Yeah, I'd be leaning towards Redcliff as well myself. They've got their own boutique stadium there too. It's not too bad, don't they? They've got the backing of a very strong club behind them who have investments in all sorts of parts of Queensland, different.
I'm not recording
different things. So, there you go.
Right,
yeah. But, we tried to jump in and take over.
No, I should have. I should have had more faith. But you may keep going. And I'll just knock off this last post. And in terms of marquee players, Jamie said DC as well, to which Neil replied, what, and then backflip again. We're all very catty on social media. Don't be catty, people. And Bobby suggested Kurt Capel, which is an astute signing probably. So you're just saying off air, which franchise would you be looking at, Barn?
Yeah, well, Ollie mentioned that he'd strongly support the Redcliff franchise, and I'm pretty sure I'd back that as well. To be honest, it makes sense. They've got a set their own boutique stadium that they could play part of their games out of, as well as playing out of Suncorp, which would probably the Broncos would probably appreciate that, because I think they'd rather have the ground to themselves a little bit, considering the other two teams would be based out of Suncorp, is my understanding.
And well, the Dolphins, sorry to jump in.
No, you're right.
The Dolphins would have to be based at Suncorp as well and play majority of their games there, because that's what the NRL wants to Brisbane-based clubs playing out of Suncorp. My whole thing with the Dolphins is that they're the team who's still going to be the most connected to their roots, if you get me. Still the same colour, same logo, everything, just Brisbane Dolphins, whereas the other two won't. And therefore, for me, that leads me to believe they'll retain the bigger fan base. That's just me anyway.
Yeah, and they're one of the stronger clubs up there in the Queensland competition. They've got the strong backing behind them. They've got some very good business people in the back of that club. By the looks of things, they've got investments in all sorts of parts of Queensland and different things in and around there. So that realistically, it's not going to matter who comes through, because I'm pretty sure the NRL is going to make sure that they're a success at least to begin with. Yep. So, but I'd probably be looking at Redcliff myself.
No, fair enough. I'll be honest, I'm not across it as closely as you boys are to comment. We will, though. Have you done this, Ollie? You've got yourself a franchise. You've picked your squad as well?
Yep.
Yep, very good. I've sort of done a loose salary cap, so obviously aiming for the 9.8 mil. I would envisage, based on this, that they will. I might even sort them in price order now. I think of it. That obviously there'll be a few K here or there that float around. Who wants to go first? How are we going to do it? Just go through our squad, or should we go through player by player, or we'll just go?
I think you may as well run your whole squad out.
Yeah.
Go squad, and then an ideal maybe squad. So again, this is players who will be available to play from the start of 2023, as of today. So a squad, and then probably your ideal 17 from that squad. Ollie, you may as well lead us away.
Yeah, so I just went with the 17, and just quickly reading over my squad, then I've realised it's actually not too dissimilar to the current Titans and Warriors squads. And I'm not necessarily talking about personnel, although there are a couple in there. More talking about a sort of young back line with a bit of strike, but your star players are mainly in that forward pack. And I'd say I've gone for a primarily strong forward pack. I've not looked at specific numbers in that, but I have tried to keep salary cap in mind. So it's not all just going to be the best players from each position who are off contract. I'd say there'd be a couple of other names in there too. But anyway, to kick us off fullback, I have gone with Ryan Pappenhausen. Thought I'd spend a bit of money there, if you will. My wingers, Hayes Dunster and Jackson Paulo, both haven't played too much NRL right now, have a bit of experience. I take it from here on out, though, Hayes Dunster is going to be starting for Parramatta and be a first string winger, but they both got potential and they both look okay. My centers, Joseph Manu from the Roosters. We know how good he is. And Max Feagai from the Dragons. So another player in the vein of a Dunster or a Paulo, young, got some potential. Sorry?
Isn't it Fia Nene or something? He came up with some other wacky new name for him.
There's two fee guys. Is that?
Yeah, no, they pronounce it.
Yeah.
Anyway, carry on.
Okay, yeah. And my halves, and this is really where the Warriors and Titans influence comes. At 5'8", I've got Cody Nikorima. At halfback, I've got Jamal Fogarty. So you're running 5'8", will be Cody Nikorima, and obviously game controlling, you've got Fogarty. For me, I tried to keep that in mind, and that's the best combination I could come up with in terms of a running and game controlling half that are both of an NRL standard. My props, Christian Welch and Malaki Fotuaika, potential Australian starting props in the future. At hooker, I've gone with Blake Brayley, be a bit cheaper than his brother, and I've gone with that defensive mindset. He's been sound this year for Cronulla defensively, if nothing else, but he's a good player as well. My second rowers, Isaiah Papali'i, who's tearing it up for Parramatta, and Corey Harawira-Naera, who has been one of Canberra's better players thus far in 2021. My lock, Patrick Carrigan, who is currently out for the Brisbane Broncos. And my bench at 14, Cade Cust. I've raved on about him before. He'd be the perfect 14 for this team. I had to get him in there as well. Daniel Alvaro, the man who I tipped to have a breakout year at the start of this season, coming off the bench, along with Reece Kennedy, who I think's an okay player for Brisbane and would be a suitable bench option for this team. And rounding it out, Billy Burns, who can play second row, probably a bit of lock, and can also get into the centres as well.
Very good. Any thoughts on that, Palm?
Yeah, no, I've gone with the same halves combination. There's some pretty good startup squad, I would imagine.
Do you want to have a crack next?
Yeah, of course. So I've also gone with Pappenhausen at fullback. By the time 2023 comes around, he's going to be 25, sort of in the prime of his career. You're going to have to spend a few dollars to get him, but obviously my squad's fairly young, realistically. I've got 3 or 4 blokes in there that they'll be a bit older, but generally my age is around sort of 24 by the time the 2023 season comes around. I'm going to go with you probably have to spend a bit of coin to get Joseph Solali as well to put on the wing, but I'd have him. He's still only be 19 by the time the season comes around, and I'd have him on one wing and Alex Johnson on the other wing. Realistically, getting towards the back end of his career, he's probably going to be a little bit cheaper than what he's not going to be the most expensive winger that you're going to have to pay out for. I've gone with Joseph Manu as basically one of my star players that I'll be bringing into the centres with Morgan Harper. Morgan Harper's really impressed me, actually, from Manly. I've had raps on him for a little while, and I think he'd be quite a good starting centre if you're going to start up a club. Gone with Cody, Nikorima and Fogarty in the halves. Again, they're not going to cost you a fortune, but you're going to have to shell out a little bit of coin to get them in there. But I think that'd be a pretty good combination out of the options that were there. Mo Fodawaker and James Fisher-Harris in the front row. Spend a bit of money in that front row and make sure you got that engine room to get going through the middle. I've gone with Blake Brayley as well in my hooker just to try and save a little bit of cash. You do have your Brendan Smith there, who was an option that I thought I probably would want to go with, but obviously you need to save a little bit of money somewhere. So I've gone with Brenton Nakora and Isaiah Papali'i as my back rowers. Nakora looks like he's a very good young kid, running wise anyway. And Papali'i, we've seen what he's been doing all year for Parramatta. And both of those guys are only going to be 24 and 25 come 2023. So someone you can build a club around. I've got Jack Bird as my lock. To be honest, someone that you could push into your halves, play in the back line as well. Covers a lot of positions. And I honestly think he'd be a really good 13. You could play him on both sides of the field. He can ball play. Gone with Corey Hawiranira as my 14. Again, he's been one of Canberra's better players this year. I've gone with Paul Vaughan. He will be pushing it at 32 by the time 2023 comes around, but he can teach these young blokes, the game. He's been a superstar. You might get him a little bit cheaper as well than some of your other options at that time. Cade Cust as my utility, and Braden Hamlin-Ueli would round out my 17. He sort of had a stop-start career with injuries, but when he's on, he is a pretty destructive front row forward. I've gone with is Jaden Sullivan as my backup half, would be part of my 25. Should be able to get him fairly cheap. He does look like he's got a lot of potential there, and he could learn from Nikorima and Fogarty coming through. I've gone with Matt Dory as in my 25 as well, another young prop who looks like he could be something coming through. Carl Lawton, who's been impressive again for Manly this year, can play backup hooker, can play in the back row. Someone, who's tradesman-like that you can have in your 25. Hayes Dunster as a backup in the wings there. Franklin Pele from the Sharks, another young one coming through. Looks like he could be a serious prop coming around, and he'd be around 22 at the time of the startup. Matt Tomoko from the Raiders, only just starting to make his imprint in the NRL, but he looks like a handy centre winger that you could put into your squad. Jackson Paulo, also, again, another outside back that you could you have as your cover, and Ben Trebojevic, just because there's a lot of potential there. He could be anything. He hasn't had a lot of game time at the moment, and you probably get him for a decent price to put in his squad there. So that's the 25 I've come up with.
Very good. So for me, I've sort of organised this in the way I'd sort of approach salary cap wise, but I actually go against it. I actually would go and sign Gutho as my club captain, and I guess first marquee, just that the effort he's going to give you every week. You see his leadership at Parramatta each and every week. Hoping if you can get him for the sort of 850-ish, probably a bit cheaper than you get Pappenhausen, to be honest, at the moment, 800, 850. Joey Manu, for all the reasons you've outlined, but I would sign him as a 6.
Okay.
And then again, there's some good hookers around, but I actually would be looking to keep the connection of Reed Marnie and see if I can lure him up as well. He's off contract at the same time. From there, I'd be looking at Carrigan, Fodawaker, Saifidi as my, I guess, marquee forwards, all around, that 550, 600 mark, hopefully. From there, Luke Garner off contract, very good hole runner. And around a good team, could be a very damaging second rower. Jack Bird, you've mentioned. My half, I would actually go and chase Jock Madden. All the other half options are a bit exy, and I think he's someone you might be able to pick up and get into a first grade setup early on. And then from there, Carl Lawton from Manly, Jared Wallace, Herbie Farnsworth, Adam Kieran, Opachik, Oregon Kafusi, Mitchell Dunn, Tommy Talau. These are just back row, some backline players a bit cheaper. Morgan Harper, you've mentioned, Jack Murchie, Ethan Bullymore, Matt Dory, Tane Milne, Keegan Hipgrave, Tomoko, Cade Cust. So ideally, that would leave me with from 1 to 17, Gutherson, Tane Milne, Herbie Farnworth, Opacek, Tommy Talau on one wing, Joey Manu, Jock Madden, prop Daniel Desai-Fidi, Reed Marnie, Mo Fodawaker, Garner, Bird, Carrigan, and then Kafusi, Jared Wallace. I know he's getting older, but can do a job off the bench. Carl Lawton, Matt Dory. And the extended bench will be the likes of your Braden Musgroves, Bullimore, Dunn, Adam Kieran, great goal kicker and potential to grow into a backup half there. Tomoko, Hipgrave, and Cade Cust gives you all the options that we've mentioned. So that's why I've looked at it, a little bit different, but there it is. Let us know your thoughts. Any thoughts on any of that, boys?
I think it was a pretty good squad there, to be honest.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on your side, Daggy. Interesting halves combination. Just because Madden's young, we'd obviously have to see how he'd go in 2022. I guess with Hastings coming in at the Tigers, and Dewey still being there, and
I feel like he's about fullback now, and he's someone that we've seen. I know not at the top level, but seen a bit of. But when the thinking is, you know what you get with Gutho, you know what he does for Parramatta, and him and Marnie, I don't say can cover for it, but can ease someone into that position. Obviously, Joey Manu in between, and it was as much to illustrate, like you've done, the thinking that Joey Manu, like there's this level of marquee players that all the clubs want, and then there's this level underneath of players that can be mined and turned into stars if given a chance. I think Joey Manu is the top of all our lists.
Yeah,
all our lists there.
Yeah, be right up there. Yep.
So that was the thinking there. You know, ideally would probably want maybe another star centre, but there's not a great...
Kerrigan gives you a bit of a fallback as well if Madden doesn't quite come up.
And obviously his goal kicking's probably the best in the comp, to be honest. Or no one strikes it cleaner. And I think the key ones you've all mentioned, obviously Fodawaker is 21 years old. I was thinking about this the other day. You know where he's going to end up?
Where?
Just to have a gut feel. He'll end up at Easts. He'll be someone to go and find. They've got money to spend. I realised this because Crichton only signed a 1-year extension, and I worked out that's just because next year they can redistribute and recontract him with all the Boyd Cordner money. But they're going to have some money to spend, I think, in 2 years, and he just fits that sort. He's someone they'll go and get that will prop them up, and not that I'm overly excited about him not being in other clubs, but he just has that feel of someone they could go and chase. He
looks like a pillar, he looks like a set and forget. There's in your front row for the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, so that has that feel of, go and get him to replace Jared JWH in 2 years' time. Jack Bird, we all mentioned. Joey Manu, we all mentioned. And obviously Pappenhausen will be in big, big demand when that time comes. So interesting. Interesting. No one really chased the cheese. Just figure out of the price range.
I had him in there, but I tried to sort of boost my front row and my back line a little bit. So I probably didn't have the money for him. He's definitely be somebody you're going to go and chase, but
same.
So I was just going to ask you guys, in reality, because obviously we could only pick from this list of contract players, but when we're actually looking at this side, like, we're not stupid. There will be players who get contract releases early so they can go and play for this club, and the NRL will be pushing for it because they want them to be successful, at least at first. So I guess my question to you guys is, how many of these players do we think will actually end up making up this side? So I guess what percentage of the side do we actually think will be made up of players off contract in 2022? It's interesting as well because there are still a few players off contract this year that could be only willing to re-sign with their current club for 1 year because they also want to play for this club. So what percentage would you say?
That's where realistically, that's probably what Brendan Smith's chasing, to be a marquee signing 2023. That's why he's only taken the 1 year at Melbourne. I don't know what he's actually offered. Realistically, he's probably going to be top of whoever's up there. I would say Fodawaker's a chance because, again, gives them a building block, like we said. I would say someone like a Pat Carrigan's a good chance. I got a feeling Brisbane could just be, and they'll be up or about it. Brisbane could be scavenged. Yeah, like what's the word? A carcass for them to come in and take the likes of him and those other good players. Beyond that, look, realistically, I think Parramatta will be doing everything they can to nail down Gutho and Marnie for long-term deals. Jared Wallace getting old. Someone like a Carl Lawton would be a great pickup at the right age to go through.
Someone like your Papali'i could end up being a marquee signing for a new franchise, just given the form he's been in, and he's going to demand big dollars. So
that's right.
With the new startup, someone could decide to throw a lot of money at him to come in and play back row or lock. Your fringe halves, someone like your Jaden Sullivans or your Jock Maddens, who are a little bit of the way down the pecking order, could end up finding themselves as a starting halfback. But I'd be surprised if there's any more than about 30 to 40% of the players that we've named that are actually going to fill up a new expansion club. So
well, I strongly feel as well, and I'm very certain Munster will end up at this club as their main marquee signing, possibly captain. I feel like he'll get out of his Melbourne deal a year early. We've obviously spoken about his form.
Kicking people.
He keeps going around kicking people. Yeah, exactly.
Bellamy will get rid of himself.
100%. And I feel like it's coming at the end of next year because I feel like he does want to play for this new side. And I don't think Munster will want to wait out a year with this new side in the competition. I don't think this team wants to wait a year before they can go and sign Munster. And let's be honest, I don't think the NRL wants this team to have to wait a year before they can sign Munster. So
no, they'll want 2 or 3 big kills straight up.
Yeah,
for sure.
I feel like it works out for everyone. Like if Munster's form continues this way, and Bellamy's been public before, he's not been happy with the attitude of Munster when he goes out and does these stupid things. So it does seem like a very big possibility that he will be the 5'8" of this team when they take the field in 2023.
Oh, to just Carrigan's probably a realistic chance too because he's a club captain. He's achieved what he's done already in the team he's been in. Very well spoken, well respected, and a local that they could probably try and lure, and only young that they could lure up there and try and get as a forward leader. He might be the other one. And I think we said right there, and I think, like I mentioned, Cheese would be the other one, I would suggest.
And Manu probably deserves it, to be honest, to be a marquee somewhere.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be the slightest.
Well, you've been talking about how Brisbane will get scrapped, and I think they will. I think just about every Brisbane player currently on our list will be signed. So I feel like your Herbies will, your Reece Kennedys, your Bullimores will be signed as well. I also feel like a few Queenslanders will. It'll be a Queensland heavy squad. So Jared Wallace is a possibility. Marnie, I think, is a real good chance. It's going to be him or Cheese, I feel like, will be their inaugural hooker. He'll be one of those two will be the other big signing along with Munster and whoever else. But yeah, I feel like all 3 of the Queensland teams currently in the NRL, it will be a Queensland heavy squad.
Yeah, well, that's maybe where Opachik fits in as well, actually. He's a Queenslander and only on, I think, a year extent. He only took the 1-year extension as well. So maybe that's on the radar there. Interesting. Interesting to see if they go and try and get some English. I actually didn't realise the other bloke I want to mention is Harawira Naira. I missed him in the list, to be honest with you. And he would be very high in my estimations. I think he's really stamped himself this year, again, in a poor team, and might be one that he's easily one you could throw into a back row and not worry about.